In one large and busy city lived a man named Adrian Kato. Many people knew him, even those who had never met him before. His name was written on tall buildings, printed in newspapers, and spoken in business meetings. Workers stood up when he entered a room, and security guards opened gates before his car even stopped. To the world, Adrian looked like a man who had reached the highest place in life. He was successful, respected, and very wealthy. Adrian's life followed the same pattern every day. He woke up early in his quiet bedroom, exercised alone, and dressed in neat, expensive suits. A driver waited outside to take him to his office. From morning until evening, he attended meetings, signed papers, and made decisions that affected many people's lives. Everything around him was organized and controlled. If he needed food, it was prepared perfectly. If he needed something repaired, it was fixed immediately. There was no struggle in his daily living, but comfort did not mean happiness. When Adrian returned home each night, the large house felt empty. The dining table was long enough for many people, yet only one place was ever set. The living room had beautiful furniture that no one used. Servants moved quietly, doing their work and leaving without conversation. Sometimes Adrian would sit in silence, listening to the faint ticking of the clock echo across the room. In those moments, he felt something missing, though he rarely allowed himself to think about it. Over the years, Adrian had learned to keep distance from people. Some relatives only remembered him when they needed financial help. Some friends agreed with him too quickly, afraid to lose his favor. Many women showed interest before even knowing his personality. Because of this, Adrian began to believe that people did not truly see him. They only saw his money. To protect himself, he stopped letting anyone come close. He treated others with fairness and respect. But he did not open his heart. Work became easier than relationships because business followed rules, while human feelings were unpredictable. So Adrian lived surrounded by luxury, yet guarded by loneliness. He had everything necessary for comfort, but nothing that brought warmth. Far from Adrian's expensive neighborhood lived a girl named Mira. Unlike Adrian, very few people noticed her. Each day she woke wherever she had managed to sleep, sometimes beside a closed shop, sometimes under a small shelter near the market, and sometimes inside an unfinished building where other street children rested. She owned only a small bag, 2 worn dresses, and a pair of sandals repaired many times. Life for Mira was not planned. It was earned day by day. At sunrise, she went to the market and helped traders carry heavy baskets. Later, she moved to traffic lights where cars stopped and quickly cleaned dusty windows before the light changed. In the afternoon, she helped a food seller wash plates and wipe tables. The money from these small jobs bought her simple meals and kept her alive. Many people felt pity for her and tried to give coins freely, but Mira disliked accepting money without effort. She believed dignity mattered more than comfort. Whenever possible, she asked to work instead. Hard life had not made her bitter, it had made her strong and patient. Among other street children, she was known for avoiding trouble and helping those younger than herself. If someone cried from hunger, she shared her food even when she had little. She did not dream of riches, she only hoped for safety and a chance to live a normal life one day. At night, she lay on the cold floor and watched the sky through open spaces in the unfinished building. Despite her situation, she still believed tomorrow could improve. She trusted people more easily than they trusted her because she judged hearts instead of appearances. So within the same city lived 2 very different people. Adrian lived in comfort but guarded himself from everyone. Mira lived in hardship but kept kindness alive inside her. One had wealth yet feared human intentions. The other had nothing yet still believed goodness existed. Their paths had never crossed, and neither imagined they ever would. For Adrian, the day ahead was just another work schedule. For Mira, it was another search for small jobs to survive. As evening approached, heavy clouds slowly gathered across the sky, and the wind carried the smell of rain. People hurried home, expecting an ordinary stormy night. Neither Adrian nor Mira knew that this coming night would connect their lives and change their futures forever. That evening, the city grew darker earlier than usual. Thick clouds covered the sky, and the air felt heavy before the rain even began. Workers hurried to reach home, shop owners closed their doors quickly, and traffic slowly reduced as people tried to avoid the coming storm. Adrian Kato was leaving his office later than normal because an important business meeting had delayed him. His driver steered the car through wet streets while small drops of rain began to hit the windshield. Adrian sat quietly in the back seat, reading messages on his phone. His day had been long, and he only wanted to reach home and rest. The city lights reflected on the wet road as the rain grew stronger. Soon the streets became almost empty. Only a few cars passed by from time to time. After driving for some distance, the car suddenly slowed and stopped near a quiet road where only a few streetlights worked. The driver stepped out, saying the engine seemed to have a problem. Adrian remained inside, waiting impatiently while the rain fell harder. He disliked delays and assumed it would be fixed quickly. But within moments, something felt wrong. Raised voices came from outside, followed by a sudden struggle. Adrian opened the door slightly, trying to understand what was happening. Before he could react, he was pulled out of the car. The situation turned violent and confusing. In the chaos, he was pushed to the ground, striking his side against the rough roadside. Pain shot through his body, and his vision blurred as rain poured over him. The car engine roared and sped away, leaving him lying alone on the cold, wet ground. For the first time in many years, Adrian found himself completely helpless. Cars passed at a distance, slowing briefly before continuing on their way. No one wanted to become involved in trouble on a dark, rainy night. The rain soaked his clothes, and the cold made his body weak. He tried to move but could not stand. The world around him felt far away, and his breathing grew shallow. Not far from that road, Mira had been searching for a place to sleep after finishing her small evening jobs. The rain forced her to stand under a shop shelter for protection. While watching the empty street, she noticed a figure lying on the roadside under a flickering streetlight. At first, she thought it was someone drunk, but something about the stillness worried her. Curiosity and concern pushed her to move closer, despite the heavy rain. As she approached, she realized the man was injured and barely conscious. Without hesitation, she knelt beside him and tried to wake him. His face was pale and he struggled to breathe. Mira had seen sickness and hardship before, but this was serious. She quickly removed her scarf and pressed it gently against his wound to slow the bleeding. The rain washed over both of them, but she did not step back. She looked around for help, shouting to passing vehicles, but none stopped. The street was nearly deserted. Understanding she could not leave him there, she gathered her strength and slowly dragged him toward a nearby clinic gate at the end of the road. The effort exhausted her. He was heavy and the ground was slippery. More than once she nearly fell, yet she continued because she feared he would die if she stopped. When she reached the clinic, the night guard hesitated to allow them in. He worried about responsibility and payment. Mira insisted with determination, explaining that the man needed help immediately. Her voice carried urgency stronger than her small appearance. After moments of argument, the guard finally opened the gate and called for assistance. Inside the small clinic, nurses began emergency treatment. Mira stayed nearby, soaked and trembling from cold, watching carefully. She used the few coins she had earned that day to buy necessary medicine while waiting. Hours passed, and she remained seated beside the bed, refusing to leave. She did not know his name, his status, or his wealth. To her, he was simply a human life she could not abandon. Near dawn, exhaustion finally overcame her. She leaned back on the chair beside the bed and closed her eyes, still holding the empty medicine packet in her hand. Outside, the rain slowly stopped and morning light began to appear. Soon, black vehicles entered the clinic compound quickly, and well-dressed men rushed inside, calling Adrian's name. Mira woke in surprise, realizing the injured stranger she had helped was not an ordinary person. Confused and uncomfortable with the sudden attention, she quietly stood up, intending to leave unnoticed now that others had come. But before she could reach the door, Adrian slowly opened his eyes. Through his weakness, he saw a young girl, wet clothes dried by morning air, standing silently as if she did not belong there. For a brief moment their eyes met, the powerful businessman and the unnoticed street girl. And the connection formed in that silent glance would soon change both of their lives forever. Morning sunlight entered the clinic room softly through the window. The rain had stopped, and the city outside had returned to its normal busy movement. Inside, Adrian Kato lay quietly on the hospital bed, still weak but fully conscious now. Doctors and assistants moved around him with care, checking his bandages and speaking respectfully. Men in suits stood nearby, discussing security and investigations in serious voices. Among all these important people, one person did not belong there: Mira. She stood near the wall, unsure of what to do next. She had stayed the whole night to make sure the injured stranger did not die. But now that many powerful people surrounded him, she felt her presence was unnecessary. Her clothes were still slightly damp and wrinkled, and her simple sandals looked out of place on the clean hospital floor. She quietly turned to leave before anyone questioned her. Just then, Adrian opened his eyes and noticed her moving toward the door. Though his body felt heavy, his memory was clear. He remembered the rain, the cold ground, and a small, determined voice refusing to abandon him. He asked one of the nurses who the girl was. The nurse explained that she had carried him there and waited until treatment began, even paying for medicine before help arrived. Adrian watched her carefully. She looked tired but calm, as if she had already finished what she came to do. He called gently for her to come closer. Mira hesitated but stepped forward. She expected questions or suspicion, but instead he thanked her sincerely. His voice carried real appreciation, not pride. She replied quietly that she only did what anyone should do. To her, saving a life did not require reward. After a short moment she left, disappearing back into the streets before anyone could stop her. Days passed, yet Adrian could not forget the girl. Many people visited him during recovery: relatives, partners, officials, but their concern felt formal compared to the simple honesty he had seen in her actions. She had stayed beside a stranger without knowing his wealth or importance. She had asked for nothing and left without waiting for praise. For the first time in years, Adrian felt he had met someone who saw him only as a human being. Once he regained strength, he asked his assistant to find her. The search was difficult because she had no address. They visited markets, food stalls, and street corners until finally they located her near a roadside stand where she was helping wash dishes. When the expensive car stopped nearby, people stared. Mira became nervous, thinking she might be in trouble. But Adrian stepped out calmly and greeted her. She recognized him immediately, now clean and healthy, and understood the kind of person he truly was. She tried to explain she needed no reward, but Adrian asked if they could talk for a moment. They sat on a simple wooden bench not far from the busy road. There, without formal barriers, he asked about her life. Slowly she explained how she survived, moving from place to place, working small jobs, avoiding danger at night, and having no family to protect her. She spoke without self-pity, simply describing facts. Adrian realized giving her money would not change her future. The street would always pull her back. Her safety would never be certain. Yet he respected her pride and knew she would reject charity. After thinking deeply, he made a decision he himself had not expected. He told her he wished to help her permanently, not just for one day. He offered education, shelter, and protection. Mira grew uneasy, sensing something greater behind his words. Then he spoke clearly. He asked her to marry him. The request shocked her. She immediately refused, believing he felt forced by gratitude. She explained that their worlds were too different, and she could not live where she did not belong. Adrian calmly explained he was not repaying a debt, but honoring the trust she showed when she stayed beside him while others walked away. He believed she possessed sincerity missing from his life. He promised respect and freedom, not ownership. Mira left confused. For days she thought about the offer. She feared being judged and feared losing her independence, yet she also remembered the constant danger and loneliness of her present life. The decision felt heavy, but it also carried hope. When they met again, she gave her answer. She accepted. Neither of them called it love. Adrian saw it as respect and responsibility. Mira saw it as safety and a chance to start again. They entered marriage from different reasons, unaware that the real journey between their hearts had only just begun. There was no loud celebration, no long guest list, and no music filling a hall. Adrian did not want attention, and Mira did not know anyone to invite. Only a few necessary witnesses stood present while the legal papers were signed. Some people whispered among themselves, surprised that a man of his status would marry a girl no one recognized. Cameras were kept away, and by afternoon it was finished. Mira left the small office as a married woman, yet nothing inside her felt settled. The ring on her finger felt heavier than its size. She kept looking at it while sitting inside the car that carried her to Adrian's home. Now her home too. The large gate opened slowly. As the car entered the compound, Mira stared silently. The house stood tall and clean, surrounded by trimmed grass and bright flowers. Everything looked organized, calm, and expensive. It did not feel like a place people lived. It felt like a place carefully protected from life itself. Servants stood at the entrance waiting. They greeted Adrian respectfully, then turned their eyes toward Mira with polite curiosity. No one was rude, but their silence made her aware she did not belong to their world. She stepped out carefully, afraid even her footsteps might be wrong on the shining floor. Inside the house, everything seemed too perfect. The living room had soft furniture she hesitated to touch. The walls held paintings she did not understand. Even the air smelled different, clean and controlled. Adrian showed her the rooms calmly, explaining that she could use anything she needed. He spoke kindly but formally, like a host guiding a guest, not a husband guiding a wife. Her bedroom was larger than every place she had ever slept combined. The bed alone looked softer than anything she had known. When she sat on it, she felt uncomfortable instead of relaxed. For years she had slept on hard ground, and now comfort itself felt strange. The servants brought new clothes for her. Dresses, shoes, and personal items were arranged neatly. Mira touched the fabrics carefully. She had never owned so many things at once. Yet she felt no excitement, only a quiet fear of doing something wrong. That first evening she tried to help in the kitchen, but the cooks gently stopped her. They told her it was their work. When she attempted to clean her room, another worker insisted they would handle it. For the first time in her life, she had nothing she was required to do. The emptiness troubled her. Adrian noticed her discomfort, but did not know how to ease it. He believed giving her comfort was enough, and did not realize she needed belonging more than luxury. He treated her with respect, never unkind, yet emotionally distant. They spoke politely during meals, sharing simple conversation about daily matters, but silence always returned quickly. At night, the large house became quiet again. Mira lay on the soft bed, unable to sleep easily. The silence felt heavier than the noise of the streets she once knew. There were no distant voices, no footsteps of other children nearby, no sounds of life continuing around her. Comfort had removed struggle, but also removed familiarity. Days passed, and the outside world slowly learned of the marriage. Some business partners questioned Adrian privately. Some relatives visited with hidden curiosity behind their smiles. They greeted Mira politely, but observed her carefully, noticing every small mistake, how she held utensils, how she spoke, how she walked through rooms. Their kindness carried distance. Mira tried to learn quickly. She watched how servants arranged tables and copied them. She practiced speaking slowly to hide her uncertainty. Still, she often felt like an actor playing a role she did not understand. One afternoon, she overheard visitors whispering after she left the room. They wondered why Adrian chose someone from the streets. Their voices were low but clear enough to reach her ears. The words hurt more than she expected. For the first time since the wedding, she questioned whether she had truly entered a new life or simply moved into a place where she would always remain different. That evening, Adrian found her sitting quietly in the garden long after sunset. He asked if she was unhappy. She answered honestly that everything was good, yet nothing felt natural. Adrian listened but struggled to respond. He had spent years building walls around his feelings and now did not know how to open them, even to the person living beside him. So they continued living together, kind to each other but distant, respectful but unfamiliar. Their marriage existed, yet their hearts still stood in separate worlds. Neither realized that understanding does not grow from comfort alone. It grows from shared moments, and those moments were only beginning to form between them. Life inside the large house slowly found a rhythm. Mira woke up early every morning out of habit, even though no one required her to work. At first, she simply walked around the compound, unsure how to spend her time. The servants were polite but distant, always insisting she should rest while they handled everything. Rest, however, felt strange to her. For years, her survival depended on movement, effort, and purpose. Now comfort surrounded her, yet she often felt useless. One morning, she noticed the garden at the back of the house. The flowers were beautiful, but some leaves had begun to dry. Without thinking much about permission, she fetched water and gently cared for them. She removed dead leaves and arranged the soil as she had seen market women do with their plants. When the gardener arrived later, he was surprised to find the work already done. Instead of anger, he quietly thanked her. It was the first time someone in the house spoke to her naturally, not formally. From that day, she began helping in small ways, not because she had to, but because she needed to feel alive. She learned the names of workers, greeted them kindly, and listened to their stories. Slowly, the tension around her softened. The cook stopped watching her nervously and began explaining recipes. She listened carefully and practiced cooking simple meals, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding. Each small success gave her confidence. Adrian noticed these changes. At first, he had expected she would enjoy comfort and leave all responsibilities behind. Yet she searched for meaningful tasks. One evening, he returned from work to find a simple meal waiting for him. Prepared not by professional cooks, but by Mira herself. The taste was not perfect, yet it carried effort. He thanked her sincerely. She smiled shyly, and for the first time their conversation lasted longer than a few polite sentences. Days turned into weeks. Their routine began to include shared moments. Sometimes they drank tea together in the garden. Sometimes they spoke about small memories from their past. Adrian spoke little at first, but Mira listened patiently. Her way of listening was different from business partners who waited to respond. She listened to understand. Gradually, he found himself speaking more freely than he expected. He told her about the pressures of leadership, about people who stayed near him for advantage, and about his fear of trusting anyone completely. Mira did not give complex advice. She simply answered honestly, often reminding him that respect grows when people feel seen, not only managed. Her words were simple but thoughtful, and they stayed in his mind even after conversation ended. Mira also shared parts of her life she had never spoken about before. Nights she feared sleep because of danger, days she worked while hungry, and moments she nearly lost hope but chose strength instead. Adrian listened quietly, realizing how different her battles had been from his. For the first time, he understood courage without wealth. Their laughter slowly appeared too. One afternoon, while learning to read formal documents, Mira mispronounced several words, causing both of them to laugh freely. The sound echoed through the once silent house. Servants passing by exchanged surprised glances, noticing a warmth they had never witnessed before. Adrian began changing in small ways. He returned home earlier some evenings, choosing conversation over extra work. He asked her opinion about certain decisions, not because she understood business, but because her perspective was honest. Her answers often focused on people rather than profit, and he started reconsidering how his choices affected others. Neither of them spoke of love. Still, something gentle grew between them, a comfort stronger than obligation. The house that once felt empty slowly gained life through shared presence. Meals no longer ended in silence, and evenings carried conversation instead of isolation. Without realizing it, gratitude had begun transforming into trust, and trust quietly moved toward affection. They were no longer two strangers fulfilling an agreement. They were learning each other's fears and strengths step by step. Yet life rarely allows peace to grow without testing it. Outside their home, whispers about their unusual marriage had not disappeared. Some people watched closely, waiting for proof that the union would fail. And soon, a moment would arrive that would shake the fragile bond they had just begun to build. As the weeks passed, the calm life inside Adrian's house slowly became known outside its gates. At first, people only whispered. Business partners wondered quietly. Relatives asked careful questions. But peace rarely stays hidden for long, especially when it challenges expectations. The idea that a powerful businessman had married a former street girl did not sit well with many who believed status should always match status. One afternoon, Adrian held an important gathering at his company. Investors and senior partners were invited to celebrate a new project. It was the first public event he attended with Mira as his wife. He encouraged her gently, telling her she did not need to be perfect. She only needed to be herself. She dressed simply but neatly, trying to follow the lessons she had learned over the past weeks. When they entered the hall, conversations paused for a brief moment before continuing. Faces smiled politely, yet curiosity filled the room. Mira greeted people carefully, remembering names she had practiced. Some guests welcomed her kindly, but others observed quietly, measuring every movement she made. Adrian stayed beside her most of the evening, offering silent reassurance. For a time, everything remained calm. Then the past arrived. A woman stepped forward from the group, elegant, confident, and clearly familiar with Adrian. Her name was Vanessa, someone who had known him long before the marriage and who had once hoped to become part of his life. Her smile appeared friendly, yet her eyes held something colder. She spoke loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. At first her words sounded harmless, asking Mira where she studied and which family she came from. Mira answered honestly but briefly. Vanessa then laughed lightly and mentioned she had seen Mira before, not at social gatherings, but near roadside stalls months earlier. Her voice carried just enough amusement to draw attention. Silence slowly spread among those nearby. Mira felt the air around her tighten. She could feel many eyes watching, waiting for confirmation. Vanessa continued, describing how she once saw Mira cleaning car windows at a traffic light. Her words were not shouted, yet they carried clearly through the quiet hall. The truth stood exposed. No one said anything directly, but expressions changed. Some guests looked uncomfortable, others curious, and a few judgmental. Mira felt heat rise in her chest. She had never hidden her past, yet hearing it announced as entertainment hurt deeply. She lowered her gaze, unsure where to stand or what to say. Adrian remained still beside her. For a moment he did not speak, surprised by the sudden confrontation. His silence, though brief, felt long to Mira. Doubt began forming inside her, not because she was ashamed of her past, but because she feared she had damaged his reputation. The evening ended early. That night the house felt heavier than ever before. Mira sat alone in the garden long after dark, replaying the moment again and again. She remembered the guests' looks and Adrian's quietness. Though he had not blamed her, she felt she had placed him in a difficult position before people important to his work. Adrian eventually joined her. He assured her the whispers meant nothing and that she had done nothing wrong. Yet even as he spoke, his mind wrestled with pressure. Messages from partners began arriving, advising him to be careful with public image. Relatives called, questioning his decisions. For the first time since their marriage, outside voices entered his thoughts. Mira noticed the conflict behind his calm expression. She realized his world carried responsibilities she had not fully understood. The next morning she behaved normally, but inside she had already made a decision. While Adrian was at work, she packed the few belongings she had brought into the house. She left the new clothes neatly behind, taking only what was truly hers. She wrote a short letter explaining she was grateful for everything, but did not want to be the reason people questioned his judgment or respect. She believed his life would be easier without her standing between him and his world. By evening she was gone. When Adrian returned home and learned she had left, the house felt emptier than before he ever knew her. The silence was no longer peaceful, it was painful. He read her letter many times, realizing she had left not out of pride, but out of care for him. Only then did he understand how deeply she had come to matter in his life. For the first time, Adrian felt fear, not of losing business or reputation, but of losing the one person who had stayed beside him without reason. And he knew he could not allow the story to end this way. The house felt different after Mira left. Before she came, the silence had been normal. Now it felt heavy. Adrian walked through the rooms slowly that evening. The living room was neat as always, the dining table prepared perfectly, the garden trimmed. Yet everything seemed empty. The small signs of her presence were gone. No soft laughter in the hallway, no simple questions during dinner, no light footsteps moving early in the morning. He entered her room. The clothes he had bought were folded carefully on the bed. Nothing was scattered. Nothing was taken except the small things she had owned before she ever met him. On the table lay the short letter she wrote. He read it again, even though he already knew every word. She had not blamed him. She had not complained. She had simply stepped away so his life would remain easy. That was what hurt him most. For the first time, Adrian understood something clearly. She had never wanted his wealth, comfort, or name. She had only tried to protect him, even if it meant losing her own safety again. He sat there a long time thinking about the night she saved him, the way she refused payment, the way she learned slowly in the house, and the way she listened without judging him. He realized his life had changed quietly while he was not watching. He had begun returning home earlier because of her. He had begun speaking honestly because of her. The walls he built for years had opened without force. Now that she was gone, he felt the truth plainly. He did not marry her only out of gratitude anymore. He loved her. The next morning, Adrian did not go to the office. Instead, he asked his driver to take him to the areas where they first found her months ago. They searched near markets, roadside stalls, and unfinished buildings. Many people did not know her name, but some remembered her kindness and pointed to places she sometimes visited. By afternoon, they found her near a small food stand, helping wash plates just as she had before. She looked tired but calm, as if she had already accepted returning to her old life. When she noticed Adrian walking toward her, she froze in surprise. She expected anger or disappointment. Instead, Adrian spoke gently and asked if they could talk. They sat on a wooden bench close to the busy road, the same place where he had once asked her to marry him. For a moment, neither spoke. Passing cars filled the silence. Adrian finally explained everything he had realized since she left. He admitted he had been slow to understand his own heart and that he allowed outside voices to create distance between them. He told her she never ruined his reputation, she gave meaning to his life. He said he did not come to bring her back out of duty, but because he wanted to live with her as his true partner. Mira listened quietly. She confessed she left because she feared becoming a burden to his world. She believed his peace mattered more than her comfort. Adrian answered that peace without her was no peace at all. He explained that respect from society meant little if he lost the one person who had stood beside him when he had nothing to offer. For the first time, they spoke openly about their feelings instead of hiding behind politeness. The distance that once separated their worlds no longer felt important. They understood each other not because of wealth or poverty, but because they had both faced loneliness in different ways. Adrian held her hand and asked her to return, not as someone he rescued, but as someone he chose. This time, Mira did not hesitate. She saw sincerity not only in his words, but in his effort to come find her himself. She accepted, not for safety now, but because she also cared for him deeply. When they returned home together, the house felt alive again. Their relationship changed after that day. They no longer behaved like strangers sharing space. They made decisions together, spoke honestly, and learned from each other. Adrian no longer hid behind distance, and Mira no longer felt she needed to prove she belonged. People still talked outside, but their voices mattered less. Those who truly knew them saw respect between them grow stronger than status differences. What began as gratitude had become partnership. Their story did not end in a grand celebration, it ended in something quieter and stronger, two people choosing each other freely, not because of need, fear, or obligation, but because they had discovered peace in one another. And from that day forward, the large house was no longer just beautiful. It finally felt like a home.